One. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Kim Havens. I'm from An Unlikely Story, and I'm so excited to welcome you for this very special event with Lisa Unger. Before we start, I have a couple technical tips. If you lose your connection or the video, just refresh your page and you will jump right back into the event. If you have questions, you can enter them in the Ask a Question box right at the bottom, and we will have a Q&A after Abby and Lisa's discussion. To purchase a copy of Last Girl Ghosted, you have to read it. You're going to love it. Click on the green button. It's right in the center bottom of your screen, and each copy will come with a signed book plate. Lisa Unger is a New York Times and internationally best-selling author. With books published in 30 languages and millions of copies sold worldwide, she is widely regarded as a master of suspense. Tonight, she's going to discuss her new novel, Last Girl Ghosted, which has earned starred reviews from Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, and Library Journal, and is on so many most anticipated books lists. Guarantee it's going to be on the New York Times bestseller list. I've been a fan of Lisa's since Beautiful Lies and always look forward to her next book. You never know quite where she's going to take you when you open one of her novels, as she never sticks to a formula, surprising us anew with every unputdownable thriller. I'm so delighted to host this event, as Lisa is not only one of my favorite authors, she's also one of my favorite people. Unger's critically acclaimed books have been named on best book lists from The Today Show, Good Morning America, Entertainment Weekly, People, Goodreads, and many others. She's been nominated for or won numerous awards, including the Hammett Prize, Macavity Thriller Award, and Goodreads Choice. In 2019, she received 2 Edgar Award nominations, an honor held by only a few authors, including Agatha Christie. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, NPR, and Travel and Leisure, and she joins us this evening from the west coast of Florida, where she lives with her family. Tonight, Lisa will discuss Last Girl Ghosted with Abby Endler, creator of the wildly successful Crime by the Book blog. She's been a crime fiction fan ever since she read her first Nancy Drew book, discovered in her mom's childhood collection in a dusty box in their attic. After going on one adventure with the Strawberry Bond Sleuth, she was hooked. She's been exploring the crime fiction genre ever since, and we are going to have just an absolutely fantastic time tonight with both of them. So without further ado, please welcome Lisa Unger and Abby Endler. Hello.
Hi, guys. Thank you for that amazingly sweet and kind introduction, Kim. And hi, Abby.
Hi, Lisa. It's so great to see you again.
Oh, it's good to see you.
How are you doing? How's your publication week been so far?
It has been actually kind of amazing. It's been super wonderful. It's been like kind of a hybrid, actually. Like last year we were all locked down and we were at home for the whole, for the entire tour. But this year I've actually done 2 live in-person events here in my hometown area, one at Tombolo Books in St. Pete and one at Oxford Exchange. And, it was unexpectedly just kind of joyful, to be out and talking and seeing people and, people gathering to, to talk about books and buy books. And so I was, very just excited and happy, and it's been kind of nice. And it's also really nice to be able to visit stores virtually like this still and connect with people. And so hi everybody, thanks for being here.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. And I know I selfishly feel very fortunate that the virtual event option is still around, because it means that I get to chat with you about your amazing new book, Last Girl Ghosted, which is my new favorite book of yours. I've decided it's official.
Yay!
I love it so much, and I have so many questions for you that I think we could probably talk for hours here. So I wonder if we could start kind of at the very beginning. Maybe you could set the scene for readers. What is Last Girl Ghosted all about?
Okay, so when we start Last Girl Ghosted, we meet Ren, and Ren is she's an advice columnist. And, she comes from a very dark past. Of course she does. It's the Lisa Unger book.
Of course.
There will be trauma. No doubt about it. But, she's kind of moved through this really dark space in her life, and she's come through to create just a really warm and comfortable world for herself. She's successful, she's wealthy, she has like a family of friends that she's chosen, and she's moved from trauma into the light. And in her work as an advice columnist, she tries to help other people make the same journey.
Yeah.
And but it's her best friend Jax that's like, well, I mean, you haven't been with anybody, you haven't met anybody in so long, you're just avoiding this part of your life. And so she kind of pushes Ren into the online dating scene, the world of dating apps. And so, Ren kind of reluctantly enters, and she has a couple like sort of underwhelming encounters. And then she meets Adam. And when she meets Adam, she falls in love, and she falls hard. And they have a, sort of blistering, like white hot romance for 3 months. And then after a particularly lovely evening, a romantic evening, he makes a request. He says, tell me something about yourself that you have never told anyone. And she does. She reveals to him, the dark secret, or at least one of them, of her past. And that's what you do, right? In a relationship, you start to sort of reveal yourself and hope that it's enough. But the next day, Adam disappears, and his social media profiles have been deleted. His phone is disconnected. The place where he was living turns out just to have been a vacation rental. And Ren is devastated. She's just gutted. And so when a private detective shows up at her door, she learns that there are other women who thought they were in love with Adam, and that all those women have disappeared. Yeah. And so most people would just say, okay, I'm just going to lick my wounds, and I'm just going to be grateful that whoever this guy is, he didn't get from me what he got from these other people. But Ren, that's not Ren. So Ren wants answers. She's a fighter. She's a hunter. And so she decides that she's going to follow Adam's very dark digital trail into his past and into her own.
And she finds some very dark stuff in there. And something that stood out to me right from when I opened this book, actually from when I read the plot synopsis, I love how you kind of catch readers' attention with a premise that is so relatable. I mean, how many of us, watching this event right now have either been on like created an online dating profile, set up a dating app, or had a friend do it? We probably all know someone who's done this if we haven't ourselves. Yeah. And how many of us have also joked like, oh, hope this person isn't a serial killer or something like that. And I mean, so I was curious if you could speak a little bit to, I guess, first of all, where the idea came from and why you wanted to kind of tap into something that is so relatable for so many people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I've been married for 21 years, right? So when my husband and I first met, there were no dating apps, right? There were no smartphones. There were like, listen, there were no apps. Okay. Like apps were like what you had before dinner, right? So, but there was like online dating. There was like, it had just kind of made its, it kind of had just made its debut. And I myself did meet a few people online, and people I know met people online, and it worked out just fine. It's not, it's not all serial killers out there. So that's the good news. But recently I had maybe not recently, like more recently in the last couple of years, I had a conversation with a young friend of mine, and she was talking about like her just kind of anxiety and despair at the whole online dating thing. And she was like, there's this endless pool of choices, but it's just like, it's always like there's the next and the next and the next and the next. And like, she said, how can you ever know if you chose the right person?
Yeah.
And then she went on to say how like, well, if they show up in your life and they're somewhat less than you had expected, then it's just too easy to ghost that person. They were a stranger before you met them, before they showed up in your life, and they're a stranger after they're gone.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to ghost them, or it's just as easy for you to be ghosted. Mm-hmm. And there's no tie to this person. Right. So it's like, there's no external reason for anybody to treat each other well. It's not like you're going to wind up sitting next to your Tinder date's grandmother at church on Sunday.
Right.
So there's no like external thing like, wow, I better treat this person with respect. Otherwise my community is going to look badly upon me. Like that thing has been kind of removed. And so I thought to myself, wow, like there was something so despairing about the conversation, and I thought this is like, here's this ancient pursuit, right?
Yeah.
It's a pursuit for a mate, basically. And like this technology has rewritten the code of how we find love and how we try to connect with each other. And it just felt so broken.
Yeah.
It felt so broken. It was like even the questions that she was asking me were just assumed that they were just the wrong questions. Like, how do you choose? How do you get rid of somebody if they're not what
yeah.
Or how do you how do you disappear if you don't want to be connected again or whatever, right? It was like the whole energy of like, hey, you meet somebody and there's chemistry and excitement and like you get to know each other better and then maybe there's a connection, maybe there isn't. Like that whole piece seemed to be missing from my conversation with her. And so I just, that conversation really stayed with me. And I started doing the research, into online dating and how it works and, the kind of very colorful lexicon that has sprung up around it.
Yeah.
And I just did my research, and I guess in the researching, which is usually how it works for me, as we've talked about before, like if it connects with something else that I'm thinking about or wondering about, then I start to hear a voice or voices, and it's those voices that I follow through my manuscript. And in this case, it was Ren.
And Ren is such an amazing protagonist. She is the kind of character who I feel like she just reveals more and more of herself to the reader over the course of the story. And I would love if you could kind of introduce the folks watching to Ren. How would you describe her to someone meeting her for the first time?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, well, when I first met her on the page, like I just didn't, I don't really know that much about my characters when they first show up. So I knew she'd come from really a dark past, and I knew that, she had come from a family where her father was very unstable and that, he was a doomsday prepper. But that's not the way he defines himself. He defines himself as a collapsist.
I love that term.
Which means that, he thinks the world has already ended and that humanity just hasn't figured it out yet.
Right.
And so she comes from this past where she always had this kind of shadow of doom hanging over. Like he believed that they were in the end days and he had taken them from their sort of town life and moved them out to very isolated property in an effort that they might survive the apocalypse. And, he really believed that, he was an unstable guy and he really believed that he was doing what was right for them. And so through a series of events that, we won't get into, Ren winds up moving forward from that life. She comes to realize that her father was unstable and that, that the world isn't going to end anytime soon. And so she moves out of this darkness and, some horrible things unfold in her life, but she tries to find her way. And then part of the way she does that is by, connecting with Jax and Jax's family. And she kind of creates a community and a life for herself. She decides that she's going to use her knowledge of overcoming trauma to help other people do the same, help other people solve their problems with her column. It's a blog and then it's a podcast called Dear Birdie. And she thinks that she's going to help people to sort of, find a way forward after dark things happen. But, in a lot of ways, she's using that as like a cocoon almost, that she's, it's allowing her to avoid dealing with some of the things that she still needs to deal with.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where she is when we meet her. And the other thing that kind of startled me about her, that surprised me about her, is just like how gutted she was after she was ghosted by Adam. You know, she felt a very deep connection to him, but it was like, it made her seem very young. You know, they'd only really been together for 3 months, and she'd really invested herself in this relationship, which I think only goes to show like how like isolated and lonely she felt, you know, she was, and how young she was to allow herself to connect so deeply. And then, you know, like there's a lot of the her voice is actually like talking to him in the book. You know, she's telling him the story of what happens after he left. And so it made me wonder a little bit about like, how stable is she?
Yeah. Well, and I loved, you know, getting to know her. I think the vulnerabilities that she has, and I think they make her so endearing, you know, the fact that she does have all this stuff in her past, which we won't spoil anything, of course, but I mean, I loved and felt really compelled by kind of how she is really searching for, I feel like, home. She wants to have that kind of sense of permanence and connection. And like you've mentioned, she has this kind of chosen family that she's built for herself. And I think I loved watching how she does get so attached to Adam, and then I feel bad saying it because poor Ren, but I also loved watching the fallout of what happens when that's removed from her life. And something that interests me a lot about your writing process, because we have talked before, and I know that you do kind of meet your characters as real people almost, you know, and I am curious if you could share with us a little bit about what that kind of discovery process looks like, you know, when you first meet a character. How much do you know about them? Do you feel like there's any predictability with which they reveal themselves to you? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's different every time, you know. It's different. It's a different relationship every single time. And I do write without an outline. I generally have a voice in my head. I have like some kind of like a sense of like the form of the person and the form of the book. Like I have just a general vibe about what the book is going to be. Like, it's just like, I don't know how else to explain it. And I have this voice in my head, and it's usually, pretty powerful. Like I can usually, I'm probably hearing the same few sentences over and over again before I sit down and start to write. And much in the way I get to know anybody who comes into my life, you know, on the page, the characters kind of reveal themselves in layers. And so I usually don't know that much about people, and sometimes people show up and I think, you know, they're not going to play a very big role, but then they wind up becoming more and more important. Like, you know, I think about like Jones Cooper, who has a role in this book. He's like a character from my book set in the Hollows. And he kind of showed up. I was definitely not expecting him. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what are we going to do about this? You know, we wound up back in the Hollows. The Hollows is another character that tries to, you know, get itself into every book. And it, you know, like I just, you know, and I just get to know them on the page in the same way that my readers will get to know them on the page. And it's just kind of a evolution, but it's different every single time. And it's always a surprise. And, you know, like characters like Jones, like when he showed up in Fragile, like I just thought, well, he's just the husband, you know. And turns out he had like this big role to play, but I wouldn't know that for like another, you know, 100 pages or something like that. So yeah, it's just kind of I've done this. I'm sure there are probably easier ways to write a book. I mean, I imagine there are, but I don't know. I can't do it any other way. So that's just kind of how it works for me.
Well, whatever you're doing, just keep on doing it because we love it.
Thank you.
Now, something that I know I love in all of the books of yours that I've read that I think is very true in this book is the way you craft your villains. And I'd love to talk a little bit about Adam, because I think you have such a knack for imbuing your villains with this sort of depth and these psychological layers that I think, you know, I'm not going to say that I ended up liking Adam by the end of the book, because that would be a bridge too far. But I feel like I had so much more insight into, you know, who he is, why he's doing what he does. And I love that about your stories. And I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about, you know, how you craft your villains, why it's important to you to include that psychological element when you're crafting the bad guys in your books.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think of them as I don't really think of them as villains or bad guys, and I always just I'm always a little bit surprised by, like, I remember in The Stranger Inside, Erica, my editor, was like, the villain, the bad guy, she kept referring to that character in this way, and I was like, who is she talking about? I was
I love it.
Is there a villain? Is there a bad guy? I mean, of course he was a terrible guy, but not really. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But like, I never really think that there is a villain or or a hero or any of that. Like, it doesn't really. People don't present to me in that way. Because I mean, when you talk about crime fiction, right? And you look at, like, there's always these ideas like, oh, the stakes have to be really high. Like the fate of the free world has to, like, kind of hang in the balance. And like, there has to be like this bad guy and this good guy and this, criminal mastermind that is like, constantly like confounding the hero and stuff like that. And that all always seems very like larger than life, fictional stuff, because when you really look at crime in the real world and criminals, most of those people come from, deep trauma. They come from abuse, and there's often mental illness and addiction and all these different layers that have turned a person who, like, we all started off the same way. At one point we were all like a baby in diapers, like sitting on a rug playing with like some plastic keys or something, right? Like we all started that way and then became who we are due to, some impossibly complicated helix of nature and nurture, genetics and, and environment. And, so I just try to deep dive into all the reasons why people are the way they are. I mean, that's really what drives every book for me. Like, I'm just looking for answers, looking for reasons, like trying to explain to myself why people do the things that they do. And, that's sort of where I dwell with every character. And I have like tremendous affection for all of my characters, empathy, compassion, and just a willingness to let them be who they are. Because if you don't have that, then your characters don't talk to you. Nobody likes to be judged, not even fictional characters.
But I love that so much. And I'm sure that like is what comes across for the reader. I'm sure that's what it is, because I feel like you give so much space and attention to all the layers, not only of Ren, but also of people who are doing some less than legal, less than savory things in this book.
They all need to be understood. I mean, they're not, not everybody's good, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that people are worthless or that they don't, they don't deserve to be seen or to be treated with compassion or respect. And you're not apologizing or condoning horrible actions by trying to understand where they originate. And so that's sort of always my goal with every book, is to just kind of get in as deep as I can. Like, it's not like there's a plot and then there's some characters and I'm like standing over it, like moving pieces around a chessboard. Like, that's not the way it works for me. Like, I'm in it. I'm in there, trying to write my way out.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
When I think about the characters in this book, I feel like, aside from Ren and Adam, the character who I was maybe the most interested in was the character of Jax, and particularly Ren and Jax's friendship. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about, what that relationship is like and why why it has so much importance in this story. Because to me, it felt like such like the beating heart of this book, I guess, to me was Ren and Jax's friendship. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I really love Jax too. She's really kind of, she's kind of Ren's family. Ren has two really good friends, and we can't really talk too much about Robin, but Robin is like, I always feel like she's like the one who connects Ren to her like sort of childhood self, or like young self, like the one who loved being on that land and being with her father, and who was able to extract a person from her father that nobody else was.
Yeah.
So that's her connection back to nature and to the person that she was when she lived in her family of origin. Mm-hmm. And Jax is like her connection to her, like, kind of kick-ass, like, woman up adult self, you know, and she's the kind of friend who, you know, it's like that kind of friendship that we have, that, you know, with the women in our life, like, that we totally see each other, right? You know, everybody's, everybody's flaws and qualities, and it's just full acceptance, right? Yep. Like, and those relationships, I mean, those are the relationships that sustain us through our lives. Like, there are women in our lives that are like, you know, these are the people that, you know, they cheer you through the good days and they, like, drag you through the bad ones. And, like, I think that not enough, and there's all this mean girl lit out there, you know, there's all these books about women being hateful and horrible and betraying each other, you know, and that's not the truth of it to me. Like, the women in my life are my, you know, my support system. And, you know, I think that's true for a lot of people. Like, I have some really amazing, powerful women in my life, and they have been in every, like, sort of dark time. They've been there for me. Every sort of leg up I've ever had in my career has been because of, you know, a female mentor. And so I think that those relationships are just incredibly powerful. Yeah. And there's not enough attention paid to that. It's always like this idea that, you know, women don't get along and women hurt each other and all this stuff. And I just, you know, enjoy exploring this relationship. But I don't know if you noticed the dedication of the book. It's just like to my friend Jennifer Manfrey.
Yeah.
So she's like one of my really good friends. We basically raised our children together, and we have this joke that, like, about our friendship, that, like, hey, look, if you ever showed up with a body in your trunk, I'd help you get to Mexico.
Yep.
I like that. So that's like an ongoing joke. So that's why I dedicated the book to my friend Jen, because, like, she's definitely one of those people, you know, in my life. And I've been lucky enough to have a lot of people like that. And so it is really the heart of the book. And that at a certain point in the book, it actually shifts to Jax.
Yeah.
And she plays a really pivotal role in the end of the book, and it's their relationship and their connection that really in the end is a saving grace for Ren, because she gets herself into some big trouble.
She definitely does.
It's certainly like one of those things where you were like, really?
I can only imagine, and again, no spoilers for those watching, but I have to say, I can only imagine, Lisa, you as the writer, watching Ren make the choices that she makes over the course of her, you know, hunt to track down Adam.
They're not good choices. Let's just put it that way.
They're not
made.
They're not good choices, but they are so entertaining and completely riveting. So I'm glad she made the choices she did.
I'm glad.
I'd love to talk a little bit about setting, because I love the way that this book, it moves from New York City, where I am right now, to the Hollows, which your fans will, of course, recognize. And I would love if you could share with us a little bit. You know, I'm really curious the difference between writing a thriller plot set against the backdrop of a big, busy city versus taking that plot and moving it to a small town. What do those different kind of settings actually allow you to do in the story, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I write about New York City a lot. You know, it's where I'm from. Most of my family is still there. Pre-pandemic, we're up there many, many times a year. I went to college there. I, you know, worked there for 13 years. And it's sort of like, in a lot of ways, it's the place that I know best. Of course, my New York City is like, you know, sort of my version of New York, or it's like, everything for me is always like, you know, it's like when you write fiction, it's like a dream, you know, when you're in a dream and you're like in your childhood home, but it like has a different kitchen or like whatever it is. Right. Like that's kind of how New York City feels. Like there's a vibe, an energy, a smell, a sound that I can bring myself there to that city anytime. Yeah. And I love setting things there just because of, there's so many layers to it. There's so many different, every neighborhood is like a different universe, and there's so many different, and the thing that I love the most about New York City is that it's only 13 miles long, which like is really kind of an interesting fact, because like when you're trying to navigate your way around the city and you're like in a cab or you're in the subway doesn't work and the cab is like literally moving like 1 inch an hour, and you're like, I'm never gonna get where I'm going. It's 10 blocks away and you have an hour to get there, and you're like, it's never gonna happen. But like if you got up in the morning and like walked out your front door, you could literally walk the entire length of the island.
Yeah, which is insane.
Like I used to, like when I lived in Brooklyn Heights and I worked on Hudson and Houston at Penguin Putnam, I would walk to work. Like I would literally get out my door and walk over the Brooklyn Bridge, and it would take an hour, and that was it. It was an hour door to door to walk to work. And so like that idea of like, and that was a way for me that I kind of decompressed, it was always just to go out and walk and let the city kind of wash over you. It's like forest bathing, except it's like concrete.
Totally.
It is. There's a pulse and an energy and a rhythm, and it draws you. But there's a different pulse and a different energy and a different rhythm to a small place, especially like the Hollows. And the Hollows is a town that I created, or that, sort of has evolved over a number of books. And the Hollows, same thing. When it showed up in Fragile, I was like, no, it's just anywhere, it's like, it's the place where bad things never happen. And that's nowhere, because bad things happen everywhere. And it's, I didn't really think that much of it when it showed up. I was like, it's just a town. My brother's always like, oh, it's Long Valley. This is where we grew up in New Jersey. And I was like, no, it's not. I mean, the same way that like that house in your dream is not the house that you grew up in, right? Like, it's kind of, but it definitely has some elements from the town where we were after we came back from being overseas, and then I went to the city. And so when I go there in my fiction, it washes over me in the same way that my version of New York City washes over me. And it has a different vibe, a different pace, and it definitely affects the pace of the story, and it affects the the mood of the character.
Yeah, definitely.
To one place that you're, place is such an important feature of character. Like the place that you choose to be says something enormous about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the Hollows is, and again, no spoilers, but the Hollows is the area in which it has ties to Ren's past. We could say that safely, I think. And you kind of alluded a bit to the past timeline. And I feel like the past in this book might be one where it's really best for readers to kind of uncover it themselves as they start reading. But I would love to know, I guess if you could just share with us a little bit about, what it actually looks like for you as the author when you're juggling multiple timelines in your writing process. How does that actually work for you?
It's not like, I know some people talk about how like, some people I know write the one timeline and then they write the second timeline. Yeah. That is not the way it works for me. It's it's the same as with character, these things evolve on the page. So, like I was writing initially just about Ren and her life and meeting Adam and her, how Jack shows up at her house and, how she goes to do their podcast and all that. And it was, it's in the writing of those things, the way the character, the way the story evolves, that all of a sudden I am shuttled back to where she came from, to the things that formed her. Yeah. And there's not any way, I mean, I'm the worst person to ever talk about writing, because I have the least amount of perspective on my process of like anybody I know.
I love it.
And like, I am just like I'm the last person to ask that kind of question. But I will say that like, so Crazy Love You, it's being developed into a graphic novel by an artist. Yeah. And we were going through, it's still in its early stages, but we were going through the plot and, trying to find the pieces that would best, propel forward the graphic novel. Yeah. And Marco, the artist, he was like, do you realize that you have 3 timelines in this book? And I was like, do I?
Oh my gosh.
He's like, yeah. He's like, you have the present tense timeline. He's like, you have the backstory. And in that particular book, there's also a graphic novel that was evolving.
Yeah.
Right. So and he was like, how did you do that? And I was like, I have no idea.
That is amazing.
But the way I think about it is that like none of us are living in the present tense, right? Like you're going about your business in your life and you're constantly shuttled back to your past. Yeah. And you're constantly shuttled forward into your future. Like, I want this. I think this is going to happen. I need this to happen. Or like back. I can't believe this happened. If this hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't be here right now. Yeah. Like this is the way our minds work. Yeah. Right. So for me in the storytelling, like that's how it works for me. Like I'm going along with this character and then all of a sudden I'm shuttled back to what brought them to the place that they are right now. Yeah. And, it's just something, it evolves in the same way that the dual timelines evolve in the same way as the characters do. Yeah. On the page, like everything is in the writing. Like there's no intellectual, like, okay, I have these 2 timelines. So this happened then, this happened that, and I'm going to write it this way, and I'm going to draw a diagram and hang up little stickies and so. No, yeah, there's nothing like that. Not for me.
It is just amazing.
It might be a lot easier to do it that way. I can get myself a whiteboard and see what I can do with it.
I love that so much, and I know I think I've gone a little bit over my time here, but I would love to ask you one more question. Yeah. If that's okay, because I know
you're good with time.
Good with time? Okay, perfect. Thank you. One of my favorite qualities of your writing, and this might be something that you just do intuitively, but I feel like your books are just, you truly don't want to stop reading them. Like it actually caused me some problems because I had other things to do when I was reading this book and I could not put it down. And I mean, do you have any sense of, or is this just intuitive for you, how you create that sort of page turning quality? Is that something that just flows naturally?
Well, yeah, I don't really know that I set out to create a page turner, right? Yeah, like, because I'm super involved in what I'm writing and I write for the same reason that I read, because I want to know what's going to happen, right? And it's like an engine that drives me. And I'm always deeply involved with what's happening. I'm thinking about it constantly, like all the time. Even when I'm not writing, it's still kind of, germinating, and I dream about the work. I wake up in the middle of the night having solved narrative problems. I'm on the treadmill and thinking about it. So like I'm very, very involved in the writing. And so for me, it always feels very urgent. Right? Like what's happening on the page is very like, I'm very involved in it. So I feel like maybe like, and if I didn't feel that way, like if I ever was like, yeah, whatever, like, I don't know, like, I don't know what's going to happen. I have 3 choices and I'll pick one, then I don't know that I would be able to give that same feeling of urgency and like, involvement to my, to my readers. Yeah. I feel like that's the thing. I mean, for me, and I think that's and I'm sure, because you've talked to a lot of writers, that it's really like one of 2 camps, right? Yeah. Like there's the writers that just outline, they have their character sketches, they know every single chapter before they even sit down to write. And, they have whiteboards and index cards and all that stuff. And, I think that plenty of people write really, really successfully that way and that they're able to generate the same level of excitement for their readers. But like for me, I wouldn't be happy working that way. And so I can't bring that reader joy. Like I want that reader joy from my own book. Yeah. So I couldn't bring that to my readers unless I was like, oh, I can't believe this. What's going to happen next? Like if I didn't have that feeling, I could give it to readers.
I love that so much. And I mean, that must mean that the ending of this book and all your books comes just as much as a surprise to you as it does to the reader. Is that true?
Absolutely.
That is so wild. That's amazing.
Yeah, I never know how it's going to end. I don't want to know how it's going to end until, because otherwise there's no engine to drive you.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing to, because it's a long haul. It's a year. It's a year of good days and bad days, and days where you're like, this doesn't work. This is the worst book anybody ever wrote. And what's worse is that like I'm not good enough to fix it, and like you just have this miserable feeling like this is wrong, it's bad, and then your manuscript like kicks you out. It's like, oh yeah, that's how you feel. Well, get out. And you can't get back in. And then all of a sudden you do get back in, and you're like, I got it. I know where we're going. It's this really like emotional, like sort of year of being involved with people and story and all the stuff. And I just don't think there's any other way for me to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think my last question for you here, and I'll just remind the audience, if you have a question that you'd like to ask Lisa, you'll find a little ask a question button at the bottom of your screen. We'd be happy to answer any questions. I think my last question for you, Lisa, having written this book, if your daughter someday comes to you and tells you that she's going to get a dating app, are you going to support this? Are you team online dating after writing this book?
I mean, unfortunately, I think that this is the way of it, you know, and we've talked about my daughter before and the very strict screen limits that she has had all her life. And she's a sophomore, and she's just now starting to get things like Instagram and Snapchat. And, during the pandemic, whatever battle we were fighting against the screen was lost completely, But I feel like, I was happy to have her start using that stuff to be here with us so that we can help her metabolize how to deal with the types of, the types of predators that you can find online, the types of miseries that you can find, in social media and, things like Snapchat and whatever. But I honestly don't think that there's any way back from the dating apps. We tell her about we talk to her about friends, right? Like you're going to meet your friends when you're doing the things that you love to be doing, right? Like that's how you're going to meet your peeps.
Right.
Right. Like do the things that you love to do, and then you be authentically yourself. And then you're going to draw the people to you that belong in your life.
Definitely.
And I think that is true of love as well. Yeah. And, I do think that the whole phone thing and the dating app thing, I think it's a little bit sad. It's like when you go to a bar, you go to a club, and 100 years ago, when I was a young person going to a bar, going to a club, you actually went to those places to meet people and to connect and to dance. And now when you go to those places, everybody around is doing this.
Yep.
Or they're like doing this. They're like dancing. They're like
totally.
Right. And it's like, wait, there are people all around you that you could be meeting.
Yeah.
You don't need to be on the phone seeing if there's anybody nearby that might want to hook up or whatever it is that you're looking for. And so I think, when my poor daughter, she has all these horrible conversations with her parents, like all the time. And so we talk about things like that, but I don't think there's any way to not use these things. I just hope that we can, that she navigates them better than most.
Yeah.
Well,
Lisa, thank you so much for chatting with me.
You're the best. You're such a great reader and such a great interviewer. I appreciate you so much.
Well, I'm so happy to have the chance. I can't even tell you how much I love this book. Seriously, I devoured it, and I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to chat with you about it, Lisa. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abby. You are so good.
Oh, thank you.
And everybody who's on here would benefit from following Abby's blog and her Instagram feed, and which is at Crime by the Book. You know, if you're looking for great book recommendations, like she's your woman. She's got it all going on.
Thank you so much.
I feel like I have a new friend. It's like, yay.
Thank you.
That's the greatest thing about virtual events is that, you know, we get to see each other. We're all at home.
Yeah.
And then I get to meet you, Abby. So yes, everyone purchase the book. You're going to want to read it. I think I picked it up and that was it. My Saturday was gone. Yeah. It was like one of those Saturdays on the couch, like, okay, I guess I'm not doing anything. Maybe put the laundry. That's about it.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you guys. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.